Hello and welcome to Hitting the Bar, the football podcast. I'm Chris Karle.
And I'm Geoff Saunders.
Geoff, what a weekend of football, some strange turn of events.
Indeed there were, yeah.
First of all, of course, it's VAR, isn't it?
Sadly it is. And I think we can, and I'm sure we will, discuss the incidents in themselves, some of which were very strange. But do you not think that a lot of these things are happening simply because they have VAR?
Almost like they've got to justify it, you mean, kind of thing.
Exactly, yeah. We have all these people in Stockley Park, so we might as well use them. And yet, when it was sold to us, it was told it was going to be to correct the obvious mistake.
Yeah, I kind of see what you mean, because VAR is now an almost integral and essential part of the game. It's not part of your match day entertainment. You get your programme, your pie and your pint, and then you have to have VAR at some point during the game, otherwise it's not a proper game of football anymore.
Yeah, it's become an industry in its own right, hasn't it?
Yes, they're kind of trying to justify it to themselves. Like you've said it many times, that this referees limited company is a limited company. I mean,
yes.
They're like an entertainment agency, but they don't provide acts, they provide referees.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is in and of itself an absolute disgrace that the refereeing of the Premier League is carried out by a limited company whose purpose is there to make a profit. How did we get to this ludicrous Alice in Wonderland position where we have that?
It looks like referees are now a commercial asset.
Yes.
Or not much of an asset, but they are a sort of something to be traded. Does that open it up a little bit to some sort of corruption or pushing in some direction?
Very much so, yes.
Yeah, well, let's look at the incidents then, because first of all, I'm a Tottenham fan, but I have to say, Lo Celso really should have been sent off for a blatant stamp.
Absolutely, no doubt at all. And I defy anybody to look at that and say anything other than he had to be sent off.
Yeah, I mean, everybody has said, Tottenham fans as well. Maybe it wasn't deliberate. Maybe, he was a bit slow and he couldn't put his foot anywhere else, but it was a stamp is a stamp.
It was a stamp.
Mourinho did a Wenger, and Arsene Wenger has said he didn't see the incident, borrowing from his old adversary there, a stock phrase to get out of jail.
Well, I think the most intelligent comment about everything to do with Mourinho at the moment is, well, why did you expect anything different?
Yes, well, we'll get to that, I suppose. We're going to have to. But he said he didn't see it. I often wondered when Wenger used to say that, well, isn't that your job to be watching the game?
Well, kind of. You think so, wouldn't you? Yeah.
However, Lo Celso stamp, that went to VAR. The fellow at Stockley Park who was watching that game, first of all, came back and said no dangerous play. And then later on, this referee's company announced that they'd made a mistake.
Yeah, and the guy admitted in, was it the 80th minute, that, he'd got it wrong. So now, I'll tell you what we should have now. We should have a VAR company looking at VAR decisions.
An independent inquiry.
Refer the VAR decision to another VAR appeals.
Yeah, the announcement on Lo Celso is due on Thursday afternoon by the time they finish with it. But
it's just a farce.
It is. I mean, what I don't understand now is the referee looks at it, he's not sure, or he makes a decision that VAR is saying to his ear, no, wait a minute.
Well, in this instance, the referee couldn't make the decision because he was blocked. His vision was blocked. He genuinely didn't see it, and you can see that.
So that went to VAR. They then said no dangerous play. They then come out and later during the game, actually no, it was a stamp. It should have been a red card, but it's too late. Previously, if the referee didn't see it, as in this case he didn't because you say he was blocked, and if he doesn't put it in his matchday report, then they can give a red card retrospectively. But in this case, it's already been looked at. So Lo Celso, even though everybody's now saying yes, including VAR and the referees, yes, it should have been a red card. It's too late. They can't take any action against him.
Correct. And one of the reasons given for introducing VAR was that the team that is punished is the team that have had the bad thing happen to them. So in this instance, Chelsea have been punished because the Tottenham player should have been sent off. Therefore, they would have been playing against 10 men. Now, without VAR, what would have happened if the referee had made no comment in his notebook is that the Premier League would have looked at it and given Lo Celso a red card retrospectively. But who gets the benefit from that? It's the next team.
The next team, yes.
Play, not the team whose player was stamped on.
So it didn't actually work anyway.
No.
That system didn't work before. It was just a VAR light because it was like not live but after the event. Yeah. But actually the team whose player did the offence, they get punished as they should do.
Right.
But it's the next team that play them that get the advantage. You're right, it could be Chelsea's nearest rival.
Yeah, well actually they only get half the punishment, don't they? They played the rest of the match with Lo Celso on the pitch. So they went down to 10 men. Next match or two matches, whatever it is, yes, they don't have Lo Celso, which is a punishment because he's a very good player.
The way it used to work is the next two or three teams got the advantage.
Yeah.
Plus, if he had only in retrospect. If he'd have been sent off as well, then Chelsea and the next three teams get the advantage, and Tottenham get punished. But in this case, they didn't get punished. There were a lot of other VAR incidents, which we'll look at in a moment. But before we do, trivia.
This is to make Steve happy, because this is one about history, and it is famous history. Okay, this concerns a very, very famous football player that we all grew up knowing the name of and knowing the reason why we know the name. So, who was the first man to wear number 9 in a cup final?
First man to wear number 9.
Yeah, I think it was the 1933 cup final.
Okay.
First man to wear number 9 in an FA Cup final.
All right, we'll get the answer at the end of the show. But back to VAR. There were certain other incidents during the weekend as well. The man at Stockley Park who was looking at the Tottenham game then had a 2.5-hour break to I suppose, be reprimanded or told, what do you think you're doing? He then had to look at the Leicester City-Manchester City game, which was a big game, of course, because you're looking at who's going to be second, who's going to be third, who's going to be fourth. There were a couple of incidents in that game. Leicester City still think, and they're still complaining, that they think they should have had a penalty.
Oh, it's Stonewall penalty, yes.
There were two incidents. The first one was a free kick, swung in. De Bruyne jumped up, quite well done. Jumped up, because we've often said, haven't we, on this show, that it's amazing how many times they duck.
Yeah, he did not do a Xhaka, no.
No, it was a Xhaka, wasn't it? Granit Xhaka, he's famous for ducking out the way of free kicks. But what he did was, as the ball came towards him, he put his hands in front of his face, but not against his face. They were away from his body, and the ball hit his hands, which in the penalty area, which is a penalty.
It should be, yes.
Because the ball hit his hand. But the VAR said his hands are in a natural position, and therefore not a penalty.
Yeah, but they weren't. If you move your hands towards the ball, which is what he did, it's a penalty.
If he thinks he's using his hands to stop the ball hitting his face, then he is using his hands to touch the ball.
Exactly.
Which you're not allowed to do. So
you're not.
He deliberately, in fact, touched the ball with his hands.
Yes. The fact that you're protecting your face. I mean, outside of under sevens matches, I've never known that excuse to actually work on any football pitch.
No, cynically, I may be thinking, but maybe he was going to use that as his excuse for what he was doing, was trying to manipulate the ball's direction with his hands.
I'm quite willing to believe that it was a genuine reflex action. He's protecting his face, yes, but that doesn't mean it isn't a penalty.
Well, no, it doesn't, because it doesn't matter ball to hand, hand to ball. If it hits your hand in the penalty area, it is a penalty.
If you've moved your hands to the ball.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
And he did.
And he did, and he definitely did. So that was one incident.
He thought the ball would hit him in the face. He put his hands in front, and sure enough, it hit his hands. He moved his hand to the ball, by definition.
Why else would he be moving his hands? In order to touch the ball for some reason or other. So that was one incident, and that could have changed the game. Then there was the goalkeeper coming out and basically punching the attacker in the throat with both hands.
Yes, and
going for the ball missed.
Yeah, and if you turn that situation around, do you think that if that was done by anybody except a goalkeeper, he wouldn't be given a penalty? I mean, come on.
Violent conduct.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't maybe not deliberate. He was just very slow. But
yes, but the law for a foul doesn't bring in deliberate. It's not there. It's the act.
Yeah.
The fact of the act. He punched a player in the head. It's a penalty, and you can have a debate about whether he should be sent off. Was it deliberate foul play or not? That affects the punishment, but it doesn't affect the fact of it was a penalty.
So unlucky Leicester. Not the first time this season.
Not the first time, no. But there's another curious thing about that match that I can't remember seeing a second versus third placed match where neither team seemed to really care that much about it. I mean, it wasn't a passionate encounter, was it? No, it wasn't Leicester. Oh, we're coming for you. We're going to get second place. If you win, well, it doesn't make much difference, and if you lose, well, it doesn't make much difference either, does it?
Well, it actually doesn't, though, does it?
Exactly.
Nobody remembers who finishes second, but they remember if you got into the Champions League next season, which they're going to. Well, Man City might not be, depending on what happens with the UEFA ban. But both teams are pretty much guaranteed of being in the top four.
Yes,
so possibly
because everyone down to 15th, well, with the exception of Wolves and Sheffield United, everyone's pretty much doing their best to throw points away.
Well, exactly, yeah.
So nobody's actually pushing Leicester and Manchester City. They're in their own little mini two-team league there. And, if you come second or third, well, who cares, to be honest?
Actually, it makes no difference, second or third. Chelsea having beaten Tottenham, though, you'd have thought they would have wanted to... I mean, they're both teams are well ahead of Chelsea, points-wise. But still, you'd have thought a little bit more passion in that game just to make sure you stay ahead of Chelsea. Maybe they were looking for the draw. It did finish 1-0 to City. Unlucky Leicester, though, because they did lose to Liverpool earlier in the season when they also had the Stonewall penalty against Liverpool at Anfield. Should have finished a draw.
You look at Leicester's performances when indeed he plays and their performances when he doesn't play, and it's a huge difference.
Indeed, it does.
Well, exactly. I mean, the guy's he's a force of nature. He's a wonderful player, and they miss him very badly when he's not there.
Yes. All right. So that's the second and third sort of battle, or lack of battle.
Lack of battle. Yeah.
Lack of battle.
But I'll tell you what, though, I reckon from now on we might see City go on a long unbeaten run.
You feel, yeah?
I got the impression that Guardiola was using this UEFA decision to wind his players up. And they looked a lot better than they have in recent weeks.
So you feel there was a little bit of the siege mentality that Ferguson was famous for and carried out with aplomb. Mourinho carries out with a little bit of a sort of bull in a china shop, and rough edges kind of effect.
Yes.
And Guardiola has used it in a much better way.
Yeah, I would not be. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but I would not be at all surprised if they went unbeaten to the end of the season.
Right. Well, you're talking about unbeaten runs. Your team, West Ham, nearly stopped Liverpool equaling Man City's unbeaten run or winning run of 18 games.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the Latin motto would be for West Ham, but it would certainly have nearly included it.
Almost nearly.
Yeah. The number of times West Ham have nearly done something. What is so frustrating about that is that having got to the position where they were winning the match
twice,
Moyes then gave in. He threw in the towel and took off Anderson to bring on Haller when he should have taken off a defender probably and brought Haller on. It was the attacking that got us into the winning position. Why stop doing it?
Yeah,
just handed the momentum to Liverpool.
You were attacking them at that point anyway, up to that point, in waves.
Yes.
I mean, pulling them. It's the first time Liverpool have actually been pulled apart in such a way. I don't think they could cope with it for large periods of the game. But Liverpool being Liverpool went on to win 3-2. West Ham struggling now desperately.
Oh yeah, and David Moyes did what I'm afraid David Moyes does. He gave in.
Was it a fact that we can't believe that we're actually you went 1-0 in the lead, then 2-1?
Do managers change their spots? I mean, Franklin on the football show on Saturday was making this point about Mourinho. What do you expect? This is what he is. Managers don't change their spots. Well, Moyes, I think he's very much in the same sort of boat as Mourinho. His way of playing is now so old-fashioned. It's been passed by not once but twice in the last 10 years. He's out. The world has moved on and he hasn't.
Yeah.
You don't sit back and try and defend that because you know damn well you can't. If you sit back against Liverpool, they will destroy you. Everybody knows that. Every team that has gone to Anfield this year and sat back has been destroyed.
Yes. And you're going to lose anyway. You might generally, you've got 90% chance of losing to a team that have not lost all season. But you might as well give it a go.
Exactly. But by attacking them, West Ham got to 2-1 up and then threw the towel in.
It's one of those things that didn't last very well, but during the game, I think it was Sky Sports put on a little selfie video from Gary Neville in the studio screaming into his phone when West Ham were 2-1 up. He's screaming, "They're doing it again! Liverpool are doing it again! They're blowing it! They're throwing it away!" And then, of course, moments later, Liverpool scored 2. That won't last well. But Gary Neville, obviously, Man United fan, desperate for Liverpool to have lost, but they almost did. And then, as you say, maybe West Ham threw the towel in, or couldn't believe that this shouldn't be happening to us. We're West Ham. We're not this good.
Well, Moyes did that, and if I was one of the players, I'd be furious. I would say, look, we were winning. Why did
We're almost there.
You do this?
Yeah. All right. Where does that leave West? Well, it leaves West Ham in the bottom 3 still.
I think it leaves us exactly where I thought we were before, and favourites for relegation.
So you think you're still going to go down along with Norwich, and then it could be anybody, couldn't it? Norwich, West Ham. Then you've got Aston Villa, you've got Bournemouth, you've got possibly Brighton.
I think Newcastle are more likely to fall into it than Brighton.
But you still feel West Ham are going to go down?
Yeah. I mean, after we finish playing all these top teams, we got nine matches, and we're going to need 2 points per match from that to get to 39 points. 2 points per match. We haven't even got 1 point per match so far.
No.
What is going to be this huge turnaround?
Yeah, all right, let's nothing, I don't think. I think you've got to have some very, very bad results from the other teams around you to make that 2 points per match not necessary. You've got to have the other teams losing all their games.
But apart from was it Brighton who drew, I think every other match at the weekend went West Ham's way.
Well, on the reverse side of the coin, me as a Tottenham fan, including the Tottenham game, of course, every game went against us. It couldn't have been a worse weekend for a Tottenham fan.
It's called karma.
Is it?
You hire Mourinho.
You just don't like Mourinho, do you? But I have to say, when he took over, we were in 14th. We were in 5th until we lost to Chelsea, and then Man United went and won.
Man United won, yeah, and I have to say, and I don't like saying this, and I feel very strange saying it, but they actually look good winning.
They look good, did they?
Oh dear. Fernandes is a real player. And Mason Greenwood's the real deal too. That final goal, I mean, the way Fernandes broke, and he broke sharply to the right to drag the left back away and give Mason Greenwood the space. They traded passes, and that finish was wonderful. But Fernandes, what a player! He's seriously good.
Yeah, a lot of, including again Gary Neville, but a lot of ex-Man United pundits, and there are a lot of them, raving about Fernandes, saying that he's going to be a new legend and a new, superstar for the fans, and they've really found a talent. Perhaps they finally have, because they've had some underachievers.
I think they have. I have to say, though, that the penalty that he got was not a penalty. You could see as they and the beIN Sports people slowed it down till you could see he was clearly in the air before Foster got out and got to him. He was in the air before. Now, if he'd stayed on his feet, he would have been fouled and it would have been a penalty. It's a fact that he dived before he was...
Right, so his timing was out.
Yeah.
But if he'd not done that, it would have been a penalty anyway.
I suspect it would, yeah.
Right, so Manchester United now up to 5th. Tottenham dropped a little bit. As I say, we were in 14th when Mourinho took over. We have won the last 3. We've been underperforming for a year, I think. Under Pochettino, with or without Pochettino, I don't think it's completely Pochettino to blame, or Mourinho that's done well. I just think there's something a little bit rotten within the fabric of Tottenham at the moment, which surprises me, and it's not something I found myself saying very much. We've been able to say it about Arsenal, because it's been the case for years, about Man United. But there's something not right at Tottenham, and it's not just Mourinho, it's not just Pochettino. There's something else going on.
I agree 100%. It's very clear that there's something badly wrong there. And I think the final argument between Pochettino and Levy really gives it away. That, Pochettino wanted him to be shipping these players out to create room for new players to come in. Alex Ferguson's famously said every particular team has a lifespan of 4 years. Now, Pochettino dragged that out quite a bit longer than 4 years. He
squeezed that lemon dry, yeah.
Levy wouldn't budge. Now, Mourinho is left to pick up the pieces and try and do something. Now, why did they choose Mourinho? 2 reasons. One, we know what Mourinho does. It's a low block in defence, quick transition to midfield, and then nothing. Right. And what did he do at the weekend for maybe 3rd match in a row? Defend, hit a long ball to the big man. Only you don't have a big man anymore.
No.
It's Mora who's 5'8". But Tottenham are paying 15 million a year to a manager who couldn't do what Pochettino did. End of last season, when Kane was out, Tino changed the team around. They played differently and still won. Mourinho is now doing his typical Mourinho self-defence thing. Oh, I've got no bullets. Well, we're paying you 15 million a year. Saying I've got no bullets doesn't make any bullets. We're paying you 15 million a year to find some.
Sort it out, son.
Yeah. And he's not. What we're seeing is Mourinho. These are the usual year 2 excuses in a Mourinho 3-year
He's
cycle.
getting them in early,
He's getting them in early, yeah.
I have to say, in his, not defence, but I very much felt for him last week after the Leipzig game and before the Chelsea game. In the press conference, one of the journalists said something worthy of myself. It was a stupid thing to say. It was naive, and Mourinho just tossed his head back and laughed ironically, and because the journalist said there was a presentation for Jimmy Greaves, because it was his 80th birthday, and of course he wasn't well enough to be there. But they made a big presentation before the Leipzig game, and Harry Kane was there to present a plaque to Jimmy Greaves' family. And the journalist said, so, you've got no strikers, you've got this crisis, but I saw Harry Kane walk onto the pitch and give this plaque to the family. He looked quite mobile. Walking and playing a football game are completely, it's a different thing completely. So the fact that he was able to walk onto the pitch, why isn't he playing football, was basically what this journalist was asking. And Mourinho just went, how am I supposed to answer that?
Yeah, I mean, he can't answer that, and it's moronic, but then Mourinho has said almost exactly the same thing before, hasn't he? He said it about Hazard in his last year at Chelsea. So, he looks fit enough, why isn't he playing?
Yes.
And then when he disgracefully attacked that doctor, Dr. Carneiro, and forced her out of the club because she said, my duty, and in fact it is a legal duty she has, is to the health of the player, not to you to tell me who should play and who should not play. He was not fit to play. And Mourinho got her sacked and thrown out, and it cost Chelsea a lot of money paying her for the unfair dismissal and all that sort of stuff. So Mourinho's got a bit of the same sort of previous as that journalist.
Yes, nobody expects footballers, and I don't even expect managers or human beings in general, to remember everything they've said and to be consistent completely all the time. You're going to say one thing in your defence and the complete opposite when attacking somebody else. Of course you are. That's just natural. But Mourinho kind of is very obvious with it, I suppose. Sometimes you want him to be a little bit more subtle about the way he goes about things.
Yeah, I mentioned two things about Mourinho. The second is that I very strongly believe he was only hired because Joe Lewis wants to sell Tottenham, and having a big, in inverted commas, big name manager in there will help him do that. And I think that leads on to why we have the Woolwich Wanderers struggling, Tottenham struggling, West Ham struggling. They have two things in common. One, they're all London clubs. Two, they've all moved from their traditional home. Well, sorry, Woolwich Wanderers.
How many traditional homes?
From their third home to their fourth. But they've made these moves for commercial reasons, and people who bought the clubs bought them for commercial reasons because they're in London. And the thinking is because you've got the huge population there, because all the money in the UK is gathered in London, you're going to make more money from it. And people like Joe Lewis, people like the owners of West Ham and the guy who owns the Wanderers, they're in it to make money, to make profit. Football and the quality of the football is not one of the measures that they use.
Are you sure? Yeah, unfortunately that is the case, and as you say, Tottenham recently moved into a £1 billion stadium, state of the art, fantastic, worth every penny, etc., etc. Previously they've been at Wembley, and as again Franklin, who's on our radio show on Saturdays, also pointed out, Tottenham had to play a couple of games at MK Dons as well. They didn't have a home for a year. They've been in this transitional period, and players wanting to leave, and Pochettino not being able to sign anybody for 2 transfer windows, and now that team is into their 4th, 5th year together. I think yes, they're out of date. It needs freshening up. That's a problem that Mourinho's got. But then West Ham moved to an athletic stadium which doesn't belong to them.
Yeah, it's
an Arsenal on their whatever it is, 2nd, 3rd home. And also, all teams struggled in that following season. All those teams have struggled in the season or seasons following on from that move.
I think it's plural seasons. And have a look here in Spain, where Espanyol went into the Olympic Stadium. Same problem. The supporters are so far away from the pitch, you create no atmosphere. You get 40,000 people in the Olympic Stadium watching Espanyol, and you think it's empty. And it's the same. It's the same thing. Now, Espanyol actually decided to have a football stadium built for themselves. They did, and they improved massively. Although actually struggling this season.
They are struggling this season, yeah.
But the last few years, they've done extremely well when they're back into a football stadium.
The problem with the London Stadium is that it's an athletic stadium.
Just one of the problems.
One of the problems, yeah. Yes.
They should be selling binoculars.
Like at the opera, yeah.
Yeah. So you can actually see what's happening down on the pitch a long way away.
Yes, but it is like the opera, but more divers than divas. Let's move on.
Yeah. Does it worry you to aim for humour and miss by so far?
No. Let's move on then, because Tottenham, previous to the Chelsea game, they won their last 3. They did move up from 14th to 5th, but there is a crisis there no matter what. Mourinho notwithstanding, it's something that's been there for a year.
Indeed, and if you look at the quality of the squads that have won the Premier League, take Leicester out of this, the Premier League is won by the team that spends the most money.
Generally, yes, it is.
Generally. Yeah. And this year is actually going to be one of the strange years where that isn't the case. Liverpool's net spend under Klopp. Have a guess what it is. Net spend under Klopp for Liverpool.
I dread to think it's probably around the same as Tottenham's, I'd imagine.
75 million.
Net. Wow.
It's nothing. It's absolutely nothing.
That's incredible, yeah.
This is Klopp managing those assets, buying younger players and making them better. If you look on, there's a website called transfermarkt.de, and you can click on it and get it. It translates into English. It has every player in every European league. If you go on Liverpool, you'll see that the value of the squad is massively higher than the prices paid for the players. Go on Manchester United squad, it's exactly the opposite.
Yeah, Pogba's responsible for a lot of that, I would imagine.
Well, Pogba's only about 20 million down. I mean, there were worse than that.
Worse contenders.
Yeah, but the whole squad is.
So the squad is worth less than they paid, almost man for man.
Far less.
But then that must be down to, apart from that they're not very good, or they're not. They were bought. Manchester United spent more than they should have done, but also they've been badly managed. Then,
indeed.
So they're up to 5th, but again, that doesn't mean anything. Just they've gone above Tottenham because we lost one game. But neither Solskjaer nor Mourinho are delivering what they were asked to deliver. Not really.
Yeah, and none of those teams down there are the best teams. The best teams in the chasing pack are Wolves, who are clearly the best team out of that lot, and Sheffield United. Or United.
The United,
United. And I just hope both those teams can get a bit more consistency and keep going.
Well, I just wanted to mention Wolves because, of course, they had a great week in Europe. And
they did, yeah.
Following that, they went on and won again.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to mention, you talk about the outstanding talents. Shota for Wolves. Portuguese.
Yeah. That's a surprise. Yeah,
he's superb though, isn't he? He's absolutely brilliant. Can't stop scoring. You know, a bit like Haaland in Germany, but his score rate now, Shota, is absolutely so many shots from Shota going into the goal. He's a brilliant player, and Wolves are going to struggle to hold on to him, I think.
Oh, I would think so. It depends. I mean, if they get into the Champions League, they'll hold on to him.
They're not going to get into the Champions League, Wolves. I don't think.
I don't know. We'll see.
Well, we were saying earlier we think Leicester and City have got it sewn up for 2nd and 3rd.
Yeah, but let's imagine that City's appeal doesn't work. So we're now going down to 5th place in the...
Yeah, so
it's possible. It's possible.
It could be... 5th could be any one of Tottenham, Manchester United, Wolves or Sheffield United.
Yeah, look at the league table and look at the points per match that each team has played, and then think, okay, this team goes on a run of 3 games, winning 3 games in a row. You jump up that league a long way.
So if Sheffield United and Wolves go on a running streak, and maybe City don't, or Leicester don't, or Chelsea don't, Chelsea quite possibly could go on a losing streak of 3 games.
Could do, but they looked they looked much better against Tottenham. Now that's partly because they got players back from injury, so there were players playing that had been out for the previous 3 or 4 games, and they looked very good. Chelsea's problem has been they haven't got the goals that their attacking play warrants, and you can see that if you look at the official stats, this XG stat. Chelsea's XG is far higher than the number of goals they scored. They should have scored many, many more goals. Now, you can't blame Lampard for that. That's the players. They should have taken the chances. Unfortunately, Chelsea are also conceding too many goals from set pieces, and their defence has been poor. And that, I'm afraid, you can park at the door of Lampard. What have you been doing down there in Chobham on the training pitch? Your defence is no better now than it was at the start of the season.
Talking of which, didn't the 2 goals that West Ham scored against Liverpool both come from set pieces, by the way? Both from corners, I think. That's quite weird, considering how good Liverpool are. You'd think they would have that covered. And
incredibly unusual for West Ham as well.
And unusual for West Ham, yeah. Yeah, so set pieces still playing a big part. But just theoretically, had Chelsea beat, back to their full strength or almost full strength as they were, beating Tottenham 2-1. If Tottenham had been at full strength, and that means Ndombele fully fit, Lamela fully fit, Harry Kane and Son and Sissoko, who's also long-term injury, had all those players been available and fully fit for Tottenham, how different would that game have been?
Well, that would depend on how Mourinho wanted them to play. I suspect he wouldn't have played all of them. He would have... It's an away match, so he would have set out to defend, because that's what he does.
But I just think that if Harry Kane or Son, one of the two, had been on the pitch, I think we may have come away with at least a draw. I do feel.
It's possible, but Tottenham didn't play very well. They attacked a bit at the end, but it wasn't convincing. I think you're more likely to beat that Chelsea defence with movement from quick players. Like, Moura should have been ideal in there if he'd had any support. But you don't lump high balls to a centre forward who's 5'8". Yeah. It's... No. I'll give you a clue. It won't work.
It won't, no. Before we move on to the games coming up the next round in the Premier League, let's have a little look at the European games. You're both Champions League and Europa League. My team, Tottenham, of course, lost narrowly 1-0 to Leipzig, and actually, again, towards the end of the second half, or halfway through the second half, started playing quite well. But they lost. They lost.
I don't think... you lost narrowly in
Score-wise.
Score-wise, yeah. I mean, you had a 1-0 thrashing there. To be
1-0 thrashing.
I mean, Leipzig looked so well coached, so well drilled. It's not a boring thing because when teams attack the way they did, wave after wave, it's really exciting to watch.
Even though no goals going in doesn't make any difference.
They should have scored more, and don't quite know why Timo Werner and his friends didn't, but they didn't. So Tottenham still theoretically in with a chance.
I think so. I mean, if anybody can win away after a narrow 1-0 thrashing, it is Mourinho. He has got form for that kind of performance.
Yeah, but he's got to be a lot more positive than he's been so far, and he was at the weekend, parking the bus and hoofing the ball to the big guy up front.
He's got to bring on the only striker that we have, Troy Parrott, who's pretty much almost untested, very inexperienced, but also, bright prospect, so he might have to just risk it. It's a one game.
Yeah.
You're either in or you're out, so it's a one game. If you lose, you lose. If you don't, at least you've given it your all. But it's not a league game.
Well, I think Levy would be entitled to ask Mourinho, why are we paying for this player to be in the first team squad if you're not going to play him? If you think he's not ready, we'll send him out on loan to someone and they'll make him ready.
Yes.
Look at Manchester United. I mean, I'm no fan of Solskjaer as a manager, but he was forced to play Mason Greenwood. He played him and he's looking great.
Yeah, suddenly he's knocking on the England door.
Yeah, and justifiably so, he should be. And so why can Troy Parrott, if he's good enough to be in your first team squad, he's good enough to play by definition.
Yeah, I feel we keep repeating ourselves on that one. Parrott fashion.
Indeed.
However, so Troy Parrott, will he be in or out for the Leipzig game, the return leg? Wolves won their game. Arsenal won away at Olympiacos. Man United came away from Bruges with a credible draw. The other teams are doing okay, apart from Tottenham. In Europe.
Well, yes, exactly. And where are we with Chelsea Bayern tonight?
Yes, Chelsea Bayern. That's a big one.
That's a big game.
I think Chelsea will lose.
I don't think so, because German teams, and Bayern Munich in particular, this applies to, tend to get very defensive when they play English teams. So I can see a draw tonight or a win by 1 goal for Chelsea.
Right, I don't think Chelsea will win. Let's put it that way.
I don't know, we'll see.
By the way, the other team, of course, that played last week was Liverpool, who narrowly got beaten 1-0. So not all good for every team in the English league, but still, they'll probably go on and win the home leg.
Well, you'd bet them to overcome a 1-0 thing at Anfield in European night, wouldn't you?
You would. You've said on this podcast before that despite league problems, Real Madrid are a one-game team, a cup team. They are at home this week. By the time people are listening to this podcast, it might all be over. But bear in mind, we have to record this at some point, so it's a Tuesday. Real Madrid play Manchester City this week in the Champions League, first leg of their last 16. Real Madrid at home.
That's going to be quite a match, I think.
Yeah, I think, Man City, they could come away with a draw from that one, but I think Real Madrid, if they show up, they'll be looking for goals.
I don't know. I think the issue is more Guardiola's mindset. Sometimes, particularly in the Champions League, not sometimes, it has been every time in the Champions League, he overthinks and he sets his team up to beat the opposition. Now, you compare that to Wolves manager Espirito Santo and United's manager Chris Wilder. They set their teams up to be the best they can be. And I think that's how you beat Real Madrid.
You mean that Guardiola... Yeah, so Guardiola changes his game plan depending on who he's playing. So he's playing to the weaknesses of the other team rather than the strengths of his own.
Yes.
Which Wilder said, look, this is what you guys can do, go and do it.
Yeah, this is how we are, this is what we're going to do.
No matter who we play.
It's up to you to stop us. And Guardiola has been doing that for the last 3 years, and that's the reason City have gone out.
All right, so they might just overthink it.
Yeah, if he just picks his best 11 players and says, OK, boys, it's only Real Madrid, go out and have fun, they'll win.
Yeah, I mean, actually, Mourinho does actually do the same. Tries to outthink his opposition.
Yes,
and sometimes you've just got to go, just boys, go out and play like you can.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter who you're playing, actually. So that's Real Madrid against Man City. Let's have a little look at the Premier League games, because obviously we are getting to that nail-biting crunch time part of the league. Norwich against Leicester. Could be a defining moment for both teams, I suppose.
Well, in Norwich, and they're nailed on relegation.
Yes.
Yeah, 3-1 to Leicester.
Yeah, 3-1 to Leicester. I think I'll have to go with that. You think Norwich might get a goal, but Leicester will need that win as well, despite their sort of nonchalant attitude, laissez-faire attitude to finishing fourth or third.
Yeah, Leicester are materially worse without Ndidi, and Chilwell at left back has not had a good season. So
unexpectedly, because he was a bright young prospect as well, wasn't he? Exactly. Everybody was going to buy, and now he's sort of not there, is he?
There is a pattern emerging that when he's 1-on-1 against a very good player, he doesn't look nearly as good.
Mm-hmm.
And if you start saying players are good because of what you've seen them do going forward, remember there's defenders first.
So that is Norwich losing at home to Leicester. Brighton against Crystal Palace.
Yeah, it's not Brighton. A derby.
It's not a derby.
Far too far away from each other.
The fans like to think it is a sort of. There's a rivalry between them, stupidly, really. But it's Eagles against Seagulls.
Yeah,
I'm seeing that as a draw.
I think a draw.
I'm seeing that as a draw. Crystal Palace in a bit of trouble. They've got to sort of pull themselves out of it, but there are teams below them that are a lot worse than them, so they'll stay up. I think, Crystal Palace.
I think so, yeah.
But that's a draw. Brighton against Palace. Bournemouth against Chelsea. Bournemouth lost to Burnley 3-0 last weekend. Chelsea beat Tottenham. Chelsea are away, and they are inconsistent. Win one, lose one.
So Chelsea are away, so it's an advantage to Chelsea.
Yeah, they're worse at home, apart from...
Yeah, I think Chelsea will win. I think the question is, will they concede a goal or not?
Yeah, they will.
2-1 to Chelsea.
Yes, I'm hoping for a draw. Because obviously I need Tottenham to have teams like Chelsea and Man United and Wolves and Sheffield United drop points. But I can't see Chelsea dropping more than 2 points away. They won't lose at Bournemouth. That's for sure. So. Not good enough to beat Chelsea even at home. Newcastle against Burnley. I'm saying Burnley win.
My gut feel is Burnley win, but I'll go for a home win for Newcastle.
You're going for Newcastle, all right. And then we've got West Ham 0. West Ham against Southampton. Good chance for 3 points there.
It should be a chance for 3 points, shouldn't it?
Yeah, so Southampton to win.
So I think West Ham to nearly win.
Nearly win, yeah.
We'll have a nearly.
The nearly boys.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. No, I'll say West Ham will win that. I think they'll be so buoyed up by the performance against Liverpool for 70 minutes.
Yeah, they were beating them. They were actually beating them for some parts of the game.
Beaten by your own manager.
Yes.
No, West Ham will win that.
West Ham to beat Southampton. I'm going to say draw. And Watford against Liverpool. Yeah, well,
Watford nearly beat Liverpool at Anfield, didn't they?
They did. They're another team that almost.
Close.
Yeah.
You have to keep coming back. Liverpool have got too much for them.
Yeah, you have to say Liverpool are going to win that. There's no doubt in my mind. Watford to lose to Liverpool. Big game. Everton against Manchester United.
Home win there, I think.
Mm-hmm. We're going for Everton to beat Man United.
Yes.
I am going to go with a draw for that one, and then Tottenham against Wolves. A veritable 6-pointer, really. We're both looking for, at the very least, a Europa League place.
It kind of advantage to Tottenham in this because Wolves are a counter-attacking team. It's not that we're going to defend and counter-attack. It's their style, and everything is worked really brilliantly. But if Tottenham don't attack them, then Wolves can't counter-attack, and Tottenham won't attack them. So
both stood in their own half.
Yeah, I think the draw.
I'm going to go for Tottenham to win 2-1. And then also on Sunday, that game's on Sunday, but also on Sunday, is the EFL Cup, the old League Cup final.
Oh, the League Cup.
It's the final on Sunday. Aston Villa against Man City. Just a question of how many will Villa lose by?
I think it is, yes.
Sadly, I mean Villa, another team in the relegation battle. They won't want to get too many injuries or tire out players because they could still probably go down.
Well,
and they don't want to win the cup and go down because that's not something you want to be recognised for, is it?
Well, let's be clear here. It's not the cup. It's a cup.
A cup, yeah.
The cup is the FA Cup.
The FA Cup. And this is another cup.
I think the issue is whether Dean Smith, the manager of Villa, carries out the threat that he said on after their last match. He said there were so many players there not performing that have played themselves out of the cup final.
Mm-hmm. So he's just going to say, look, give a chance to unknown players, basically.
It might not be a bad thing to do because he's going to lose anyway. Yeah.
He is going to lose. You might as well just say, listen, you 12-year-olds, stop playing happy sack and get on the coach.
Yeah, I think he may as well, to be quite honest. I can't see.
It doesn't matter what team he puts up against Man City.
No, I can't see any way he wins. No.
And with all due respect, Aston Villa are sort of there by default because they played a previous game. The semi-final was against Leicester, but the quarter-final was against Liverpool, and they did put out a completely different squad. Not one player was a regular Premier League player. They sort of got a little bit of not a bye completely. They still had to play, but they were given an advantage.
Well, yeah, but then they had to beat Leicester and did, so that's okay.
Yeah, true enough. All right, so we're saying Man City are going to win that. It's just a question of by how many. I'd love to see Villa win that. I would.
Oh, it would be wonderful.
It's not going to happen.
I don't think so.
That's the second cup final, the second tier cup.
Yeah,
not the cup. All right, that's just about all we've got time for. But before we sign off, Geoff, the question and answer to your trivia question.
Right. Okay. The question was, who was the first man to wear number 9 in a cup final? Before I tell you who it is, I'll explain why he was the first one to wear number 9. They didn't have numbers before this, so the team, which was Everton, were numbered 1 to 11, right. and the opposition team were numbered 20 to 31.
Why? Why did they decide even to have numbers at that point then? It's a bit weird, isn't it?
I don't know. But the first man to wear number 9 in a cup final was Dixie Dean.
Oh, Dixie Dean, what a name. Of course, no matter how young or old you are, if you're a football fan, you've heard the name.
Yeah, and you know it because he's the record goal scorer in the league. In the 1927-28 season, he scored 60, that's 60.
60 goals?
League goals.
Ronaldo, look and learn. You're rubbish. Look at that.
Absolutely. Dixie Dean, who's just a legend.
Yeah. So, Ronaldo, sit down, man. Sit down. That is 60 goals in one short season.
And we should mention this because by the time the next podcast comes out, the anniversary will have passed. Dixie Dean died on the 1st of March 1980, 40 years ago this Sunday.
So there is the legend that was Dixie Dean and the first player to ever wear the number 9 on his back. This has been Hitting the Bar, the football podcast with me, Chris Karle.
And Geoff Saunders.
Join us next week for more Hitting the Bar, the football podcast.